It started as a routine flight for Ava, a successful Black entrepreneur traveling home after a week of business meetings. Seated comfortably in the VIP section, she was ready to unwind when a flight attendant approached her with a startling request. Could she move to a seat in the back? The reason? A white passenger, claiming special circumstances, wanted her spot. Ava was stunned but calm, politely refusing the request. That should have been the end of it, except it wasn't. The situation escalated as whispers spread through the cabin and tensions rose. Passengers glanced her way, some murmuring in disbelief, others nodding in silent support. But Ava didn't waver. Instead, she made one quick call, a call that would set off a chain reaction no one on that flight could have predicted. By the time the plane landed, what started as a quiet power play had turned into something much bigger. And for the airline staff involved, the fallout was swift and severe. What happened during that flight, and who exactly did Ava call? Stay tuned, because this story is about to take a turn that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about fairness, privilege, and the power of standing your ground. Ava sat in her seat, the phone still warm in her hand from the call she'd just made. Her heart raced, but her face stayed calm, a practiced skill she had mastered in moments like this. As the flight attendant walked away, clearly frustrated, Ava replayed the encounter in her mind. Why had they chosen her to move? The thought lingered heavy and unspoken as she noticed a few passengers exchanging uneasy glances. She wasn't the only one questioning what had just happened. Meanwhile, the white passenger in question was already seated, acting as if nothing had transpired. Ava couldn't help but wonder, what made them think they deserved her seat more? She looked out the window, the city below growing smaller, but her resolve only grew stronger. This wasn't just about a seat. It was about principle, about how often people like her were expected to shrink, to move aside, to stay quiet. But not today. The call she made wasn't to vent her frustration or seek comfort. It was to someone with influence, someone who had seen too many stories like this unfold and knew exactly what to do. As the flight continued, the energy in the cabin shifted. Little did anyone know, the real turbulence was yet to come. As the flight cruised through the sky, Ava noticed a subtle shift in the crew's demeanor. The flight attendant who had initially asked her to move now avoided her row entirely, her hurried steps betraying unease. Ava remained calm, though she could feel the quiet tension around her. A man across the aisle gave her a reassuring nod, while another passenger a few rows up glanced back nervously. It was clear that word of what had happened had spread, but no one dared speak up. In the cockpit, the pilot was alerted to a formal complaint logged mid-flight, something rare and serious. The airline's corporate office had received Ava's call and was already investigating. Ava had reached out to a trusted connection in the industry, someone who understood the weight of such incidents and had the authority to demand accountability. For now, though, Ava kept that detail to herself. Meanwhile, whispers rippled through the VIP section. Some passengers speculated that Ava might be a high-profile figure, while others debated whether the flight crew's actions were racially motivated or simply poor judgment. Ava leaned back in her seat, watching the situation unfold. What had started as an insult was quickly becoming something far bigger, and she knew the landing would be just the beginning of the fallout. As the plane began its descent, the air inside the cabin felt heavier than ever. The flight attendant who had sparked the situation was now pacing nervously near the galley, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Ava noticed her whispering to another crew member, her gestures animated and panicked. It was clear something was happening behind the scenes, and Ava could feel the momentum shifting. Passengers exchanged glances, some murmuring about the tension. The man across the aisle leaned closer and whispered, "Whatever you did, they're scrambling." Ava gave a small smile, but inside, her focus sharpened. She had done her part by making that call, and now it was up to those in power to handle what came next. As the plane touched down, an announcement crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated as we disembark in an orderly manner. The usual routine felt anything but routine. Ava noticed a group of airline personnel waiting just outside the jet bridge, their expressions serious. She caught a glimpse of a man in a suit, clipboard in hand, flanked by two others who looked equally official. Ava's heart pounded as she gathered her belongings. She had a feeling this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about accountability, and the spotlight was about to shine brighter than ever. As Ava stepped off the plane, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The stern-faced airline personnel waiting at the jet bridge weren't just there for show. One of them, the man in the suit, stepped forward. "Miss Carter, may we have a word?" he asked politely but firmly. Ava's instincts kicked in. This was bigger than she'd thought. Passengers filing out behind her slowed, trying to catch bits of the exchange. Whispers rippled through the crowd, curiosity mingling with unease. Ava followed the group into a side room just off the terminal. Inside, a senior airline executive and a legal advisor were waiting. To her surprise, the passenger who had taken her seat was also there, looking visibly uncomfortable. The tension was palpable. "We've reviewed the situation during the flight," the executive began, carefully choosing his words. "What happened today does not reflect our company's values." Before Ava could respond, the unexpected happened. The passenger in question spoke up. "I never asked for her seat," they said, their voice trembling slightly. The flight attendant suggested it, said it was a courtesy upgrade. The room went silent. Ava's eyes narrowed, and the pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't just about one bad decision, it was a systemic issue. And now Ava had the truth on her side, but the stakes had just skyrocketed. Ava's heart raced as the passenger's admission hung in the air. The flight attendant's role was now undeniable, and the executive's composed demeanor faltered for the first time. "Is this true?" he asked, turning to the legal advisor and the staff member who had initiated the conflict. The flight attendant hesitated, their face pale. I thought it would be easier that way," they stammered. "I didn't mean to offend anyone." Ava held her ground, her voice steady but firm. "Easier? At whose expense? You didn't just inconvenience me. You made a decision rooted in bias, one you thought wouldn't be questioned." Her words echoed in the small room, and for the first time, the weight of her actions seemed to dawn on the flight attendant. The executive cleared his throat, visibly shaken. "Miss Carter, I want to personally apologize. This behavior is unacceptable, and we will ensure it is addressed immediately." He turned to the legal advisor, who nodded grimly. "There will be consequences." But just as Ava thought the ordeal was ending, her phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from her industry contact, the one she had called mid-flight. "Check the news," it read. Curious, Ava opened a live feed. Headlines flashed across the screen. "**KVIP passenger incident sparks corporate investigation at major airline." It wasn't just this flight. Ava had unwittingly triggered an avalanche. Former employees and passengers were already coming forward with similar stories, sharing their experiences across social media. What started as one call had become a movement, shining a glaring spotlight on the airline's broader issues. As Ava left the room, she felt a mix of relief and determination. She had stood her ground, but the fight for accountability was far from over. What began as a personal insult had transformed into something much bigger, a story that would force change. And Ava, without planning to, had become its face. As Ava walked through the terminal, the weight of the incident began to lift. Passengers who had been on the flight stopped her to offer words of support. "What you did back there mattered," one woman said quietly, her eyes sincere. Ava nodded, feeling the impact of her decision to stand firm. It hadn't been easy, but it was worth it. Later that evening, as she settled into her home, Ava's phone buzzed again. The airline had issued a public statement, apologizing for the incident and announcing immediate measures to address bias in their policies and training. The flight attendant and involved staff were placed on leave pending further investigation. But it wasn't just about this one moment. Ava could see the ripple effects as the story continued to gain traction online. People from all walks of life were sharing their own experiences, calling for greater accountability across industries. Reflecting on the day, Ava felt a deep sense of clarity. She hadn't planned to become a symbol for change, but sometimes life forces you to take a stand. Her small act of resistance had uncovered something much bigger, sparking conversations that desperately needed to happen. Before heading to bed, Eva shared a message on her social media. Never be afraid to stand up for what's right. One voice can lead to many, and together, we can create change. As the likes and comments poured in, Ava knew this was only the beginning of a much larger movement.